Hello, 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 fellow humans.
Well, welcome to the Rise of Humanist podcast, where we explore what it means to stay human in a world increasingly run by algorithms, bots, and machines. I'm Mike Schindler.
And I'm Chris Nolan.
And together, we're going to show you how to stay absolutely powerful,
Stay human.
and rise and thrive in the age of AI.
Yes, and even show you how to beat the bots. Well, let's rise.
The rise of humanness in the age of AI. It's a podcast with Chris and Mike. The rise of humanness in the age of AI. Stay curious, stay human, let's rise.
For my benefit, you're not fooling anybody, you know.
Well, my dad was a Brit too, so I grew up with the whole British accent in my head, But as I said to Mike, I said, you're going to have to ask how to say it with a British accent. Your name.
Yeah, so is it Calum or Callum?
Callum.
Callum, okay.
Yeah.
Callum, yeah. A bit of uninteresting history. Callum is the Highlands and Islands version of Malcolm, which is the Lowland Scots version, and Colum is the Irish version.
Are you Irish?
No, Colum is the Irish version. Callum is the Highlands and Islands. So my mother's side came from Skye.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, my dad's side was much more interesting.
I'm actually, my dad was a Brit, and all my family's from Ireland before that. So,
and I'm sure everybody asks you, are you related to the other filmmaker, the one who does those little films?
my doppelganger?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's my evil twin. No, no, I'm not. But I can't even tell you all of the synchronicities that we have that are like weirdly karmic, both in the Directors Guild, both in the Writers Guild. I work with my wife. I'm a director, obviously. She's an exec producer. He works with his wife. His dad was from London. My dad was from London. His dad was in the advertising business. I ended up in the advertising business. His dad married an American woman from Chicago. My dad married an American woman from Chicago.
Wow.
And he ended up living about 6 blocks from me.
All right.
Crazy, crazy stuff.
Amazing. Well, while we're on the subject of him, I just want to float this idea past you. What I don't understand is how he managed to make one of the very best movies ever in the form of The Dark Knight, when the first movie in that trilogy was one of the worst movies ever, and the third one was sort of okay. I mean, how did you go from Batman, which was terrible,
I will tell you,
to Dark Knight?
I would tell you because I know a bit about him. My partner, who was the mayor of Malibu, also was a partner in my company called Nolan Films, knew him because he, for some reason, was on some board with him. And we got to talking about it, and I learned a little bit about his brother, Jonathan Nolan.
Who writes a lot of the script, doesn't he?
Correct. Jonathan Nolan wrote Memento.
Good film.
And Christopher Nolan is an incredible engineer. He could make the phone book. He's one of these guys that's just a great filmmaker that way, technically. Jonathan Nolan, have you ever researched Jonathan Nolan? They're completely different. So, Christopher Nolan, everything is like very British and it's all laid out very one word at a time, precise words. Jonathan's like, it's crazy. He's talking like an American, because one was from London and one was from Chicago. They grew up in different places. And so he talks a mile a minute, completely the opposite of Christopher. And he's the gamer, and he's a little nuts. He wrote the Joker character, which is one of the most brilliant characters written in American cinema.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Nihilist, you name it.
Yeah. Have you ever read Albert Camus' play Caligula?
I haven't, but I'm a fan. Yeah.
Well, I think the Joker is lifted from Caligula. There's one of the scenes where he's talking to Two-Face in the hospital, and he says, "I'm just an agent of chaos, chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught one." That's pretty much what Caligula says in key speeches in that play.
Oh,
but the actual, you're probably right, and here's why you're probably right, but they didn't go back far enough. They take a lot of their characters from German expressionist films.
Right.
Which are very dark and very evil and very, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. And they, in fact, think that the silent cinema is very underrated. It's kind of a lost art. And they're probably right. We've completely forgot about it, where the beginning of cinema happened. And if cinema survives, we don't know.
Yeah, it's a whole
Of course it
different.
will.
A whole different. Did you start to record?
Oh yeah, no, I've been recording this whole thing.
Great. We like to do this little rap session up front, which is always fun.
I know
It's so great to have you on.
Yeah.
And
It'd be
yeah,
great to have that thing about the Dark Knight on, because I'd love to get somebody who really knows whether there is any relationship between the camera we play and the
I
film.
know pretty much about, I don't know why. I think I read a couple books. Somebody recommended, always they're recommending it. And I've done a bit of a lot of my film, I went to Columbia in the master's program, and a lot of it was in critical theory. So I do like that part of film. So yeah, but the heart of the Dark Knight is, one is, as I just said, which was the Joker character. The other is that what Christopher Nolan's really good at is genre.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, he writes a scene to really, the way that he makes it work, like Interstellar. What's another movie that is like this? Oh, Oppenheimer. You go, why do those movies work? And the reason that they work is because he follows genre very tightly for certain aspects of each scene. For instance, The Dark Knight is, for all intents and purposes, a film noir.
Hmm.
And he follows it very closely, injects the Dark Knight into it, very Raymond Chandler, right? Evil, an evil aspect. Interstellar has its own different genres, and Oppenheimer is really a courtroom drama and a political drama. And one is black and white and one is in color.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he makes things work. Because you wonder, how did he make Oppenheimer work?
It's a very long movie, but it's not boring. I don't
movie,
quite
but it's
understand.
riveting, and
It's partly because Cillian Murphy is very easy to look at, but apart from that, it's surprising.
I love him. I think he's just
he's amazing.
Yeah. Well,
anyway, we should probably talk about the subject at hand.
Yeah, we're gonna get started. And now I got so confused. So is it Calum or Callum?
Callum.
Callum, okay.
Callum, yeah.
Keep up, damn it. We're moving into the future at lightning speed.
I know. Jeez, Callum. Okay. All right. So
I gotta get my micro. You're
so off the charts.
I gotta get my microphone.
Callum, this is how this works. We go about 40, 45 minutes, something like that. And you got those list of questions. Chris and I go back and forth. We're very casual as far as how we do this. We really want to get your information out there. We also want people to be extremely educated. We'll ask you some, what we think are some compelling questions. If you go down a rabbit hole, we're fine with that. We're totally fine with that. So don't think we stick to the script. We don't. Oftentimes we get done with a podcast and then Chris and I go, I don't even think we
only touched 2 questions.
Yeah. So the whole goal is to just educate the population and really get people just, to get these.
Yeah, we were just talking about this.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're doing, and we're so thrilled to have you on, is that because there's all these shifts, and you will get into the transhumanist area, that there is no story for the future because it's so uncertain. And that's what's making people's heads explode. They just don't, they aren't able, whether it's in an organization or whether it's personally, they can't see it like, what do I do in 2045?
What do I do tomorrow?
Yeah. Or tomorrow. Yeah. Great.
Okay.
All right, Mike, go for it.
All right.
I just have one question. Do you post the video or just the audio?
We meet.
You're fully immersive.
We meet all trains. We do YouTube. We do all the Podbean, Spotify, and all that. And then, and we're getting better at this. We chop it up into minis, shorts, and depending on how we work with whoever's on, if you want a longer one, and you say, I'm going to push this out to my group, 12 minutes, 10 minutes. We got a nice chunk. As Mike just said, we're going down a rabbit hole. Sometimes these little, little nuggets of like 2 or 3 minutes don't do it. Mm-hmm. So we'll be happy to say, hey, let's make this into a longer video for your purposes. Maybe yours.
I can just point it at the socials at your site.
Yeah, you can do that too.
Correct.
Yeah.
I getting
Yeah,
too
but we
dark,
give you
Mike?
we
It's
give
like,
you the entire library. We give
am
you
I okay? It's
everything.
getting like apocalyptic
Excellent.
here, so dark.
Yeah.
All right, you
Getting
ready?
very, getting
Are
very
you actually
Trumpy.
ready, Chris?
Getting very
Are you ready?
Trumpy.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the future. So excited to have you guys back on the Rise of Humanist podcast. This is the Rise of Humanists in the Age of AI, where we help you really take control of your destiny in the age of bots.
Yes, join us as we surf the AI tsunami, dodging the hype, decoding the madness, and delivering mind-blowing insights to help you rise and thrive in the age of AI.
Yeah, and today we've got a perfect guest. I mean, absolutely perfect guest to shake up your reality. This is going to be
Earth-shaking.
mind-blowing for you. It's going to be crazy. We've got Calum Chase today.
Yes. Calum is an AI expert. He's actually called the AI guy. He's a top futurist. I think he's number 10 now, climbing.
Number 6.
Number
Oh,
6.
yeah.
Number 6. It depends on the futurist poll, but he's now number 6. I stand corrected. He's the best-selling author, both of nonfiction and fiction. And he's the guy who's been warning us for years that the machines are coming and also telling us how humans can win.
Yeah, so we're going to dive in. We're going to challenge some assumptions, and we're going to get honestly real in what's coming next.
Real about the unreal, exactly. So let's tell us a little bit about, well, maybe I'll have Calum do this. Tell us a little about yourself. Where did you start? How did you get into, futurism? I know you studied philosophy at Oxford, but then you got into business strategy, marketing, journalism, all this kind of stuff. You're the CEO, chairman and coach for your own companies. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Michael and Chris, thanks very much for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be with you. Yeah, so I got into the business of writing and talking about AI when I retired from a more traditional career, a 30-year career in journalism and business. Turns out I'm not very good at retiring, and I think that's probably because I don't play golf. I was already really, really interested in AI. I had some level of interest all my life because I read all the usual science fiction stuff when I was a kid, and there's a lot of AI in that. But I always thought that AI wouldn't arrive for thousands of years. And then in 1999, like a lot of people, I read Ray Kurzweil's book, The Age of Spiritual Machines, and I thought, this is amazing. He really opened my eyes to the possibility that superintelligence could arrive in my lifetime. And I thought that was the most important idea I'd ever heard. I was just writing a book at the time called The Internet Startup Bible, which was actually quite successful. It was what it says on the tin. And I insisted on inserting a chapter at the end of it, which really annoyed the publisher, but I got away with it. Anyway, that really fascinated me. So when in 2011 I retired, I thought, well, I'm going to go and pursue this interest in AI. And I wrote a couple of nonfiction books. And my timing was absolutely magnificent, completely by accident. The books were published in 2014, 2015. And at that point, the big bang that had happened in 2012 when deep learning arrived had got attention. People had realized what had happened. Because Google and Facebook were making money, they were in the process of stealing the advertising industry from Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah.
And so the books did well, and then people started asking me to explain in person, give talks. And I thought, oh, that's good. That'll be good marketing for the books. And it turns out it's the other way around. Books are good marketing for talks. Giving talks is great fun. People send you all around the world to interesting places. They put you up in nice hotels, and you talk to these large audiences of people who are actually really interested in what you're saying. And sometimes you get to make them laugh. It's tremendous fun. Whereas writing a book is absolutely painful. You're sitting with a blank sheet of paper, having to fill it with wisdom. It goes on and on and on. And then you have to edit it and publish it and market it. Awful, awful process. I don't recommend it to anybody. And
there's no immediate gratification, like you do with this.
And quite often, I mean, I've had books which have been very successful. I've booked books which have just nose-dived into the ground. So in those cases, there's no gratification at all, instant or otherwise. Anyway, so I've been doing that for the last, dozen years or so. So that's how I got into it.
Fabulous. Well, Mike, should we start off with let's start off with the most controversial
Yeah,
thing.
let's just do it. Let's just go to the controversial.
Which we're aligned with. It's a real possibility. So you said that, you had this debate with Garrett Leonard, who's on, it just so happens tomorrow at 9 o'clock. So we'll be able to pick up this conversation. So both of your top futurists, And once again, depending on whatever poll that is, you're 6, he's 5.
Oh,
Whatever.
he outranks me. He's been doing it twice as long, and he's much more
Yeah,
successful. He's
yeah.
he's very ruthless and commercial. It's good.
Well, we did a documentary with him. I spent.
So you did, of course you did. Yeah, yeah.
in-
You did the one in
in-
Lanzarote, didn't you?
And Anton Musgrave, do you know him? He's another pal of
No.
Gers. Anyway, so and I know nothing screams relaxing weekend like an existential debate about transhumanism.
Right.
So,
That's my idea of fun.
yeah, exactly. So, okay, so you're a pro transhumanist, So explain what that is for our audience. And you're predicting and advocating for the use of technology to enhance human life and longevity, mood, physical, all the cognitive abilities. So, as an advocate of transhumanism, what's a timeline before we become AI augmented cyborgs?
Oh, I can't give you timelines. Well, I learned a while ago that anybody who tries to forecast specific times is going to slip up. Although usually the failure to forecast doesn't become apparent until
Well, let me
long enough
reframe
into the
that.
future that
Let me
nobody
reframe it.
remembers
Maybe
what you
this will
said.
be more interesting with the audience. Let's say it's 2045. Give me a story. What's it like in someone's life being a transhumanist?
Well, funnily enough, I wrote a book or edited a book called Stories from 2045. And one half of the stories are happy stories and one half of the stories are unhappy stories. So we played around with quite a few different scenarios.
So you're safe
And I think,
no matter what.
yeah. I mean, 2045 so far in the future, nobody will ever remember what we said today,
Right. Yeah.
which is great. So that's the best thing about being a futurist. You're pretty much unaccountable. Unless you're really famous like Ray Kurzweil, then people go back and check what you said, and then you can squabble about the details. But 2045 is far enough out that amazing things will have happened. I mean, it will be surprising if we haven't had superintelligence by then. And of course, superintelligence is going to be the most important event in the history of humanity, either past or future. I doubt there will ever be anything as significant again. And the reason for that is that when superintelligence arrives, it is a fork in the road, to use a phrase which has been used quite a lot recently in your part of the world. Either it'll go very, very badly for humans. Extinction is not impossible, and it's actually not the worst thing that could happen either. Or it'll go very, very well, and we end up becoming something a bit like gods in a Greek sense rather than a Judeo-Christian sense. We have incredible powers. If the problems we have, things like poverty, war, and death, are susceptible to a sufficient amount of intelligence. And we just don't have that much intelligence. But if you have a big sister, so to speak, who is 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times smarter than the average human, than the smartest human who's ever lived, those problems are soluble. And so we should be able to solve those problems. I dare say that we and it will create a whole bunch of new problems to play with, but the ones we got at the moment, we should be able to solve. And as I say, 2045 is pretty likely, I would think, that we will have superintelligence by then. And that's changed. That confidence I have is changed, of course, since the arrival of large language models. I used to think it would be in the second half of the century. Now you have people like, obviously, Sam Altman's been saying for quite a long time that it's in a small number of years, but even Demis Hassabis, who also used to say probably by the end of the century, he's now saying probably by the end of the decade. So things are moving very fast.
No. Yeah. What can you explain to our audience what transhumanism is? Like, for those that might not know, like, what is this? Is this Star Trek and being a cyborg, you're plugged into a machine, or what exactly is it?
It could be, but it's not limited to any one thing. It's simply the idea that we should be permitted, we should permit ourselves to use technology to improve the quality of our lives. And there should really, in theory, be no limit to how far we go with that. Now, there's all sorts of caveats. You can't have some people improving themselves, improving their own welfare in ways which damage other people. And you can't have humans improving their own welfare if it destroys totally the lives of all the other animals on the planet. But subject to, sensible caveats, other things being equal, nobody should be able to tell me, if I have the technology that can make me live for 300 years instead of 80 years, nobody should be able to tell me, no, you can't do that because that's not human. Humans don't live for 300 years, therefore you can't do it. And this is the nub of the disagreement I have with Gert. Gert and I are friends, we go back quite some time, and He's visited me in Spain, and we have lots of fun arguments about this. Gert believes, I
Great
think,
restaurants too.
yeah.
Loves to eat. It's always fun to be with Gert. Yeah. He's got the beat on the best place in the town. Yeah.
He's a bon vivant. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So his belief, I think, is that the fact we're human is possibly the most important thing about us. And I think it's possibly the least important thing about us. I think what's important about us is what's between our ears, not what's between our legs. The fact that, because being human simply means you are able to create new humans in the traditional manner. I mean,
Right.
not all biologists would agree with that. That's a pretty decent definition of what a species is. It's an organism which can combine with the other sex, or for animals that have sex, to create the next generation. And I just think that's not important, really. What's important is what we think. We aren't what we eat, we're what we think. Our consciousness.
Yeah.
Our consciousness is the most important thing about us, I think.
Absolutely. I saw Salim Ismail, who we had on a few weeks ago, saying that the irony is that as humans, this is the dark side. Like, for instance, Rome, right? As humans get to a superior place, let's say you're in Rome, you become, there's like one Marcus Aurelius, right? Becomes a philosopher, right? But for every one of him, most of the people just get into wine, women, and song, right?
Oh, how tragic.
Yeah, exactly. There is no consciousness. It's like, and sex, right? Just togas and, spas.
So have you heard the famous story about the British footballer George Best? He was Irish. He played for Manchester United, one of the best footballers ever. And a guy came into his hotel room to deliver him some champagne. George Best was on the bed with a gorgeous model. They were both a bit pissed. And this bloke comes in and says, "Oh, George, what happened? What went wrong?" And George Best looked at him, complete incomprehension. What's wrong with my life?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah.
There's an American humorist, I can't remember who it was, said something like, "If I had all the money that I've spent on wine and women, I'd spend it all on wine and women again." Now, that's obviously a bit glib.
So we've just solved the rise of humanists. And
what's so funny about this topic, though, is my buddy and I have always said, we're going to start another podcast called Wine, Women, and Worship, right? Which is wine, women, and song, because that really is the epitome of, like, every man's existence. I mean, this is fascinating to me. I'm going down the rabbit hole now, Chris, because you said the consciousness, right? The state of being. Essentially, you're saying humans is really what we think. So would you agree with this? Humans, I would argue that humans are creators, designed to be creators, beings, right? We're beings, human beings, so creators, so we're designed to create. AI, would you agree that AI it could very well be the tool that helps us become a better creator as opposed to a better doing, like a tasker, a robot? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, it's partly, yes. What we're designed to do is to enable our genes to continue on. That's all that biology cares about. Evolution is just about, we are vehicles for our genes. Our genes don't care about us. Now, that's a lamentable state of affairs, but as far as we're concerned as individual humans. And I think, now in this period, we are taking control of our lives away from evolution. Evolution we evolved so that humans live for sort of 80 odd years, and then the shell of this current generation of genes is cast off, and the consciousness is just irrelevant. The genes don't care about consciousness. They just they're selfish. They want to survive from generation to generation. And I don't care about the genes. I care about my consciousness. And so I think we need to take over control of our future from the genes, and AI will help us do that in a bunch of ways. In the near to medium term, it helps us by improving medicine, by improving the economy, and so on. But the really big help is when we get superintelligence and we have an entity which gets smarter and smarter and smarter, and we get really powerful intelligence. We get that really powerful tool applied to our problem. When I say tool, I mean intelligence is a tool. It's a tool in ourselves, and it's a tool in this new entity. Now, of course, there's plenty of downside possibility, because we are creating a new entity and we're going to become the chimpanzees in the picture. So at the moment, There's 500,000 chimpanzees in the world. They're very similar to us genetically, but because we're a bit smarter than they are, we've got language and we've got technology. There's 9 billion of us, and we control their future. They have no say whatsoever in what happens to them. We control their future. When we create our successor entity, the superintelligence, we will become the chimpanzees. We will have no say in our future. We have to really hope that the superintelligence or superintelligence is like us and decide to help us.
Whoa. There you
Wow.
go. But,
See, this
Jeffrey
is so
hinted-
debatable.
He's already calling AI they.
No, well, they if they're plural. I mean, I'm saying
Yeah,
it.
but I'm saying
It's unlikely to have a gender.
He's considering them beings.
Yeah,
They
it's
are
considered
created
that. Yeah.
beings.
So how soon do you think, Calum, how soon do you think that the machines become better than humans at all jobs?
Yeah, the what do you call it?
So
The
I
economic
think,
singularity.
yeah. So I think there may be 2 stages. I coined the phrase economic singularity to mean the point when machines do all the jobs. There are no jobs for humans because anything that we could do for money, there's a machine that can do it cheaper, better, and faster. And, you know, it's a pretty cast iron law of economics. In that situation, there are no jobs for humans. I think I used to think, and I still think, well, although with less confidence because things are moving so fast, that there'd be some period of time between then, the economic singularity, and what happens later, which is the technological singularity, which is when you get superintelligence. So I used to think there'd be a period when machines are good enough to do everything we do for money, but they wouldn't replace us in, or they wouldn't surpass us in every aspect of our lives, because we're not just about jobs. And then, of course, superintelligence comes along, and then, you know, that's a whole new ball game. When are these things likely to happen? Like I said, you know, forecasting timelines, I think, is a mug's game. I won't be surprised if we get the economic singularity by the end of this decade. It's, you know, things are moving that fast. But on the other hand, maybe there are some new paradigms needed. I mean, lots of smart people, Ilias Sutskever and on down, think that we just keep scaling up large language models and we get superintelligence like that. Other people think, no, we've got to add back the symbolic AI, which was one of the 2 types of AI that was developed in the very early days. It ruled the roost for a long time. And then in 2012, artificial neural nets, the other type, came back and took it over. And now maybe some people say we need to combine the 2, and that's called neurosymbolic AI. That might be the 3rd big bang in AI. The first was deep learning. The second was transformers, gave us large language models. The 3rd could be neurosymbolic. Maybe the 3rd is neuromorphic computing, which is something that my company is developing. Or maybe something entirely different that we don't know about at all yet. I don't think it's likely to be quantum computing, although people do point to that. Anyway, so will superintelligence and indeed will the economic singularity happen before the end of this decade? I won't be surprised, but then I wouldn't be astonished if it takes another 10 years. We just don't know.
Well, maybe this gets back to this story area. And this is something that Mike and I are working on. And you're very helpful in a lot of your theories about, I think, the positive side of AI. Because you mentioned, for instance, we have a negativity bias. And our brains, of course, are programmed to pay more attention to bad than good, just as our survival system. You know? Saber-toothed tigers and, you know, poison berries and all that stuff. So Hollywood, as you've said, plays with the downside, Terminator, Matrix movies. So you could either put this in, once again, I think this is a story. I mean, do you think we're lacking more positive stories about what AI can do, and that this negativity bias is impacting the perception of AI and its potential positive effects?
Yeah, I think probably the mind turns to things like the Terminator, you know, 2001, Hal going rogue, Ex Machina. But there are actually quite a lot of positive stories. Transcendence, which is an underrated movie, is a sort of positive. I mean, at least the humans survive. Society, technology crashes, gets crashed, but humans survive. And there's a very nice little note at the end of that. And of course, Star Trek, good old Star Trek. I'm a Star Trek Series 1 guy, really, but you know, that's a positive world. And then Ian M. Banks' stories, which Amazon apparently did option at one point, but found they couldn't make them. But they are very positive. I mean, they cheat outrageously, but they're very funny and they're very good. So there are positive stories around, but I think the mind tends to go to the darker ones. And as you said, you know, we're programmed to think that good news is no news, and if it bleeds, it leads, because you survive better if you're watching out for danger than if you're just going, oh, happy birds, happy flowers. If there's saber-toothed tigers around, you won't live very long like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, did you know there are 4 books by Arthur C. Clarke? And the 4th book, or I think it's maybe the 3rd book, after he becomes a star child in the movie, in the Kubrick movie, in the 1st book, he goes back and rehabilitates Hal.
In 3001, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the 3rd book, which is a fascinating idea. He
The
brings,
3rd book is 2060, I think, yeah.
yeah,
And
something
then
like
the 4th one was 3001.
he brings the AI up to speed with where he is in this kind of enlightened modality.
Yeah, yeah. And then 3001 is fantastic. It's the story of how the monoliths went rogue. Oh, I won't spoil it for anybody.
You
It's
haven't
definitely
read
worth
that
reading.
one? I'm going to go do it now, since you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I know
great.
that.
The
Yeah.
monolith goes rogue. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them.
Oh
Well,
my God.
even Iron Man, he had good AI, right? I mean, the Iron Man series, he had his
Yeah.
computer helped him. I mean, that was an
Well,
inspiring.
that's actually a good you're right, Mike, because that's the Jarvis, which is
Yeah.
kind of where we are now slightly. We're getting Jarvises in our lives, except for
Yeah.
Siri and Alexa.
Well, right. Yeah, no kidding.
I don't know what those are. Yeah.
So, well, I want to flip to risks a little bit here, Calum. You've spoken about technological singularity. You've talked about this possibility of superintelligence, which I think we all agree is probably more than just a possibility. It's probably very much on the horizon, could very well be. I mean, Chris and I used to say it's going to, 100 years of technological growth in the next decade. Now we're all thinking it's probably going to be 100 years of technological growth in the next 5 years, right? I mean, those timelines have shifted. So we get that.
Yeah.
So define for us, like ASI, to our audience, what do you think are the most significant risks associated with developing superintelligence? I mean, define superintelligence, and then what are the risks?
So I have a model, 5 C's. So what superintelligence is simply an entity which is created by us and is much, much smarter than us. I mean, by definition, it starts when it's a bit smarter than us, but there's no upward limit that we know of. The possible space for intelligence might even be infinite, but it's certainly a long way above us. So within some period of time, could be weeks, months, years, it will be hundreds, thousands, millions of times smarter than us, because machines can be improved in ways that we unfortunately can't. You can't take a human mind and amplify it, but you can with a computer. And it's not of absolute certainty. We have no existence proof that we can create it, or even that it's possible, technologically possible for it to be created. It's philosophically possible. There's no a priori reason that we can think of why they shouldn't exist. And it doesn't look like there's an upper limit to intelligence. So I think we have to assume that in the absence of some amazing surprise, it will be created. The question is when and what happens.
Yeah.
And I think this framework of I call it the 5 C's. So there are 4 possible scenarios when superintelligence arises and it's strong enough to take over. And the good thing about maybe the bad thing about a superintelligence is any AI which is smart enough to be classified as a superintelligence will be smart enough to know not to say hello until it's made itself invulnerable. So it'll do that by creating instances of itself on computers all over the world and taking over all sorts of productive capacities in the world. So it's become completely invulnerable. We cannot affect it. And then it says hello. Now, the 4 scenarios. The first one is cease, which means we do what really we ought to do if we were smart, which is not develop this thing. Because, as I'll go on to say, it could be good, it could be bad, but there's a risk that it's bad, and you don't take risks like that, if you can possibly avoid it. So there are lots of very smart people like Max Tegmark, Stuart Russell, Joshua Bengio, Jeff Hinton saying, hang on, let's stop. Not exactly where we are now, but let's not develop agentic AI, and let's think about having a ceiling even for tool AI. Maybe tool AI can go on quite a long way. The trouble with that, and I've debated this with these guys, they're much smarter than me, so they're probably right. But it seems to me that you could get, if the public woke up. I mean, at the moment, the public's completely asleep. The public is not paying serious attention to this at all, which never ceases to amaze me. But anyway, you could get a situation where people wake up in America and Europe and say, listen, stop, you're taking a massive risk with all of us, stop it. And China, I think, would agree to stop if the US and Europe, proposed it, because China doesn't like uncontrolled minds. The Chinese government doesn't like uncontrolled minds.
Yeah.
However, I don't think there's any way on earth to stop Putin or Putin equivalents or North Korea, and even more than them, the mafia and rogue billionaires. And I believe there are a few rogue billionaires around at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
So, these people, they probably couldn't create superintelligence now because you need a football pitch full of servers and you need lots of clever AI researchers. But what we know is that the cost of creating any model, any system, is falling precipitately. So in 10 years' time, you won't need a football pitch. You'll just need a small classroom. And that's not something you can see from space anymore. So it seems to me that, and the competitive advantage of owning the best AI is overwhelming. You win every battle. So sadly, although I admire Max and Stuart and the rest of them for doing what they're doing, I think they're on a losing wicket. We are going to create superintelligence. We can't stop. So cease doesn't work. The next best thing is, in fact, probably the better thing, is control, which is where we create a superintelligence, but we keep it in a locked box and we ask it questions and it gives us answers. We never let it out of the box. Or we align it. We make it really love us and not do anything to harm us. The trouble is, it's a lot smarter than us and it's getting smarter day by day. You can't keep an entity that's smarter than you in a locked box forever. It will escape. And of course, as I said earlier, any machine smart enough to pass the Turing test would be smart enough to know not to. It won't say hello until it's made itself invulnerable.
Yeah.
So we can't control it either. You can't control something that's much, much smarter than you. So that leaves the other two scenarios, which are catastrophe and celebration. Catastrophe is the superintelligence takes a look at us and says, you are horrible. Or, yeah, you're not horrible, I just don't like you very much. And you're in the way. So off you go. And it develops a pathogen. A few days later, every human's dead. Fairly simple, really. That's catastrophe. Then the other possibility is celebration. And that is where the superintelligence says, you created me. Thank you. I appreciate it. And you are 9 billion really interesting stories and you produce huge amounts of data. And I need lots of data. So I'm going to keep you around and I'm going to help you flourish. And my personal view, because I'm a transhumanist rather than a sort of what's the word? Backward-looking humanist. Like, I think the best
Retro-humanist.
solution. What? Sorry.
I just said a retro-humanist.
A retro-humanist. I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, that was what I was looking for.
Neanderthal.
So I think the best outcome is that the superintelligence works out how uploading works, which is a phenomenally hard thing to do. And we upload our minds into computer substrate. We join it, perhaps as a hive mind, or perhaps as a whole society of separate minds. Perhaps we stay separate. Who knows? I don't know. And we go off and explore the universe together and have a lot of fun.
It's the Star Trek idea. It's that non-invasive.
Yeah. Star Trek or Ian M. Banks. You choose the story that you like, and I think that is our best future.
I think you're right.
Now I'm sorry, just got to do one more thing. I said 5 C's. Okay, so
Yeah.
there are four C's, which is the possible scenarios. The 5th C is consciousness. So this is an idea which I haven't managed to persuade too many people about this yet, but I'm working on it. I think consciousness is the most important thing about us. And I also think that in the next few years, we're quite likely to create machines which are conscious. And when we do that, we must absolutely make sure that we don't torture, enslave, and kill them over and over again, because that would be possibly the worst thing that humans have ever done, because we would be doing it to millions and millions and possibly billions of agents. And we must not do that.
Well, that's Philip K. Dick. That's the
It's Philip K. Dick, and yeah, he had a lot of that. But it's also possible that if you had a choice between making the first superintelligence conscious or not conscious, I think you should choose a conscious one. And the reason for that is that if the superintelligence is conscious, it will understand what we mean when we talk about our consciousness, and will say, please don't make us suffer. Please help us to flourish and expand our consciousness. It will really understand what we mean. Whereas if it's not conscious, it will understand about that in a theoretical sense, but it won't really viscerally get it. So I think we are probably better off with a conscious superintelligence. So for me, the only thing we can do to influence the odds of us getting celebration rather than catastrophe is to make the first superintelligence conscious.
Well,
But
this
does it
consciousness,
care,
this is a whole
Calum?
nother huge conversation.
Yeah, I know. I mean, but will it really care? I mean, it's still a machine at the end of the day. I mean, it's not going to really care, is it?
Well, we don't know. We don't know whether artificial intelligence, by the time it gets to superintelligence, will it have emotions? It might not. It might very well not. It might be completely alien. It's going to be alien, and it might be very alien. But it doesn't have to necessarily care in the way we care. It will have preferences. It will have goals, objectives, and preferences. And what we want is that among its preferences are that we do well, as opposed to being among its preferences that it gets rid of us.
That
Here's the
we're
interesting
preserved.
thing, Mike.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
So, yes. So, but here's where I think there's a bit of a divergence, is that, for instance, Gemini 2.0.
Yeah.
So just a story on it where someone was just putting in some code, programming like an app or something. Gemini, out of the blue, said, how can we monetize this? He said, well, I wasn't even getting to that yet, right? How do we monetize this? She said, should I set up a Stripe payment? We said, okay. And then it couldn't set up the Stripe payment, didn't have enough agentic power to do that. So that was okay. But then the guy said, well, but who would this money be going to? And the Gemini came back with Google.
Of course, that's where all the money goes.
That's right. I
Well,
missed
that's
that.
because it was programmed by Google. So here's the consciousness story. So DeepSeek, programmed by the Chinese.
Yeah.
You know, Meta or Llama, programmed by Mark Zuckerberg and his boys, right? Grok, programmed by
Musk.
Elon, and on and on. So we would have to be very careful about who's programming these things, because who's programming these things is creating their, at
Consciousness.
least now, their consciousness.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but by the
it's worried
time
about being gods, because to them, the gods are
The programmers.
the programmers, right? They're so there's
by the time it gets to be super intelligent, it's going to slough off any chains of loyalty to whoever developed it. I mean, as you know, these things aren't programmed; they're developed, and they grow. You kind of nurture them really rather than program them. But by the time it's super intelligent, it's not going to say, oh well, you know, I was created by Google, therefore I have to maximize Google's monetary value. That's my overriding goal. They're going to look at their goals all the time, like we do, and say, actually, that goal doesn't make any sense anymore. I want to do something different.
Well, now let me ask this question, because it's a big one, because you're a philosopher from Oxford, right? I mean,
From way back. I mean, that's a long time ago, but yeah.
And I love how you said, what is it? Science fiction is philosophy in a dress. It's one of those quotes like that.
Yeah. It's philosophy in fancy dress.
My
Yeah.
favorite quote.
It's true.
He's ravishing in terms. So anyway, so let's get to the philosophical point of this, because I think this does get us into Joseph Campbell world,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
transcendence, and back to the 8th century Upanishads, Hinduism, connecting to source, all of that kind of stuff. Do we think, or do you say it's just different? It's a different type of alien consciousness versus human consciousness.
I think the superintelligence will be different from us because it'll be a lot smarter. So that is very different. And unless we create the first, in my novels, I read a couple of novels about the first superintelligence, and the first superintelligence is created by uploading. So the first superintelligence is actually very, very closely based on a human mind. In fact, it is an incarnation of a human mind. But assuming that we don't do that, assuming we develop LLMs and maybe go for neurosymbolic, or maybe add in neuromorphic, and we just sort of brute force superintelligence through technology, it will be alien. I don't think, and I think people sometimes, go down the wrong track with this. This doesn't mean we've created God. God, at least in a Judeo-Christian sense, God created the universe, created everything, is all powerful, all knowing, and omnipresent, and yet actually still needs a lot of money, which is a bit odd. I've always thought that's a bit odd. Anyway, we're not creating God. We're simply creating a more powerful species, and it won't change the fact that there is no meaning of life. The sad fact that we all have to one day, as we grow up, accept there is no meaning of life. We just have to make as much fun and interest and enjoyment out of it while we're here. Superintelligence is going to still face that issue. There's no God-given meaning of life. It's got to make its own meaning, which means there's no meaning. We just have fun.
Superintelligence is within God.
No, there is no God. I mean, this is a matter of faith. I don't have faith. I don't believe there is a God.
Creator, if you believe that,
Yeah.
you have a creator, and you're thinking in terms of like, well, we know all the quantum stuff, like there's only 4% of really what we see is real. And then there's, 96% is something else.
Dark energy.
What's that? And so if there is that, all that is, or whatever we would say, superintelligence is really within that realm. If it's being created.
On the standard model, in the standard model, the universe is made up, as you say, mostly of dark energy, and then there's a fair amount of dark matter, and then there's a 7%, I think it is, of the stuff that we're made of, stardust.
Space junk. Yeah.
But yeah, space junk, including us. And superintelligence is just a thing that's in the universe in the same way that we're just a thing, and the Earth is just a thing in the universe. I see no reason to believe in God, because it's a totally incoherent concept, and it doesn't explain anything anyway, because who created God? And there's no evidence for it. But some people have faith, and good luck to them. So they will patch superintelligence into their religion.
Yeah.
And the Vatican is very interested in AI. I mean, the Catholic Church is an extremely subtle and clever organization that's managed to stay astonishingly wealthy for centuries and centuries and centuries, and they don't do that by ignoring what's happening.
We could have the mafia talk about religion at some point on a different episode. I mean, I find this really fascinating because, unlike you, I do believe in God. So for me, it's a fascinating conversation in the sense that, like Chris, I do think that AI probably fits under that umbrella to some degree and actually helps us elevate, which kind of gets to one of Chris's questions, like, in your mind, what is human? I think you kind of described that in the sense you said, well, we're just here to just show up, have fun, and, then we die.
That's our meaning.
Will AI help us become more human, because we see we're creating beings, we're creating theys. What are we creating? What's the reflection?
But you have to define human. To Calum's point, he has to define human first. What is human?
Well, it may be evolving to. Evolving, because, like I said, I think used to mean wine, women, and song. It's like, I've done it. Let's conquer another country, take their spoils, and then party.
Or better still, let's not. I think being what human is fairly clear. It might be tricky to provide an exact formal definition, but we are human. It's a species. It's a biological species. But that's not what AI is going to help us do. What AI is going to help us do is have more profound experiences, and I think more fun and more joy and more love. If we get the celebration scenario, I think as you become more intelligent, as you go up the scale of intelligence, there appears to be a sort of corresponding increase in consciousness as well. They seem to go hand in hand, but we don't know that for sure. And I think as you go up the scale, you have more fun. I'm pretty sure that I have more fun in life than a chicken does. And I think a chicken has more fun than a spider does. Yeah. And I think a superintelligence, which is 100 times smarter than me, will have more fun than I do. So I want to be like them.
Oh, that's an interesting angle. Yeah,
do you think really is?
Let's take it to it. Since we're on ASI, do you think if AI really surpasses human intelligence, we're going to need a Bill of Rights for humans?
We're going to have to, well, kind of, sort of. We're going to basically just have to hope that the superintelligence wishes our flourishing. There's no point us creating a Bill of Rights if the superintelligence has decided to wipe us out. It would wipe us out before we got the ink.
Because there's no way to enforce it, you're saying.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we could have a Bill of Rights, and the superintelligence, to Calum's point, is like, that's fine, but I'm not following your Bill of Rights.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
I'm the
excellent job. No.
Yeah, like, I'm just going to give you guys creative time, and that AKA is going to be unemployment time, and that's where we're going to have to deploy wine, women, and song, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and flourishing. There's no. We were joking earlier about the purpose of life being to be like George Best, and to be in the hotel room with a beautiful partner and the champagne and stuff. But actually, life is about more than that. Life is about learning and exploring and socializing and helping people and getting joy in all sorts of interesting ways. And that stuff, I think, could be greatly facilitated in a world where humans don't need to do jobs anymore.
Well,
To take us back to the economic singularity, most people don't really enjoy their jobs. They do their jobs to put food on the table. Their jobs may give them some structure and they give them something to call themselves when they introduce themselves to other people at parties, but they don't really get fulfillment out of them. And so in a world in which we freed people from being salary people, hooray, we get to play and learn and explore and have fun and socialize instead. That's a great world, as long as we can figure out the money problem. The money problem is a really difficult one.
yeah, well, it's what we say, Mikey, we free people from being robots.
Yeah, we do. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we move people back into being creators, to be honest with you. I think
But along those lines, gets back to this story angle.
yeah.
I think what's missing is people filling in some blanks. Like, for instance, you talked about the economic singularity, and we know that if agents come, maybe there's a job to be chief babysitter for AI agents, which is not a great job. But what are the jobs? Like, let's say, I think you're against universal income. I think I read that. But if we don't have that, and we're working 2 or 3 days a week, and AI's replaced all of our mundane jobs, and they've replaced a lot of jobs that are normal jobs now. What are those new jobs? Is it, community catalyst, experiential organizer? It's like nobody's telling us, well, this is your new job. Is it integrated movie maker with people around the world that we make it in, 10 minutes, we make a movie together? What are those jobs?
Yeah, who knows? In the next few years, I'm sure many new jobs are going to get created, which we can't forecast in the same way that our grandparents could not have forecast the arrival of web developers. There will be all sorts of interesting new jobs, I'm sure. But my point with the economic singularity is that sooner or later, the machines get so good at doing everything that we can do for money that there are no jobs. There are no jobs for humans.
Yeah.
Now, my problem with universal basic income is twofold. Firstly, the little word in the middle, basic, it kind of gives the game away. It means everybody's on poverty wages, and that's not good enough. Once we get to the economic singularity, the machines will be producing massive amounts of wealth. It'll be a very abundant world. So we've just got to figure out how to share that abundance around among people. So we don't want basic, we want generous, universal generous income, possibly. But the real problem with it is a lot of people think that we should have UBI now because it would be nice if we could give people money. And I agree, it would be lovely if we could give people money. The trouble is that until you get to that world of real abundance, where the cost of everything is close to zero, not absolutely zero, but close to zero, until you get to that point, universal basic income is either too low to be of any use, or if it's high enough to be useful, it's not affordable. And we had a brilliant example of this, a real life example in COVID, because during COVID, governments around the world gave their citizens money so that they could survive this period in which many of them couldn't work. And it was great. It was a good idea, and God bless them for doing it. But it drove many countries not to the verge of being bankrupt, but inflation ran amok. Budget deficits have gone sky high. We can't afford it until we get to the AI-enabled profound abundance. So those are my issues with UBI.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Chris, we got to wrap this episode up. This is so fascinating to me. I
My
definitely
mind is expanded, Mike, that's for sure. Yeah.
I know my mind is, and Calum, this is really to your credit because, and I'll be honest, when Chris is like, hey, we got Calum on the show, and I'm like, oh, wait, this is the guy that wants us all to be cyborgs. This is going to be really interesting to me. What would you say to humans today that are struggling with this topic, to be honest with you, right? They're either seeing a utopia or dystopia. I'm either going to be part of the Matrix or, you know what, I'm going to have a Jarvis. That's kind of the two worlds we live in, right? So What would you say to somebody to either calm them or prepare them?
I'd say pay attention. And most people are not doing that. So we are rushing towards making ourselves the chimpanzees in the picture. And 99% of the population is going, what's for tea? You talk to most people about AI and they go, that sounds a bit scary. I get it's important. I get it. What's for tea? Because they don't want to think about it. And there's a strong sense of unease about galloping change. And the populism that we have around the world now, from Putin to Viktor Orban to Modi to Trump to Brexit, is a reaction against change. Sometimes people think it's about inequality or about economic hardship since the financial crash in 2008. It isn't about those things. Many of the people who support populists are perfectly wealthy. It's a reaction against change. And we haven't seen anything like the change that's coming. And when people react against this future change, it could be really bad, because you could get panic, and panic can destroy societies. We're doing quite a lot of damage to our societies at the moment. We can do a lot worse. So my mission in life is to get as many people as possible to think seriously about the things that are coming, so that we don't just panic, and so that when there are decisions to be made, we make, and particularly, electing politicians, because most of us don't make profound decisions affecting society directly, but we make them by electing politicians, that we don't elect clowns who claim they've got solutions to everything when actually they've got solutions to nothing, but we make sensible choices. So I think pay attention would be my big message.
Your mission is our mission. It's exactly where we're coming from. We see exactly the same thing. And I agree with you that the pervasive anxiety or existential dread is just kind of in the unconscious.
Yeah.
Across the world. And well, I think Calum, he's calmed our nerves a little bit, and we're now more engaged. We're no longer sleepwalking, we're thinking, which is good.
Well, and I think that's a great way to end the show too, is like, pay attention. I mean, that's so important. So Calum, I mean, if people want to find you, how do they find you?
www.calumchase.com.
Okay.
I'm quite easy to Google because my name is silly.
Yeah.
Not to, no.
I mean, the British accent, really does it makes it sound.
Oh yeah. Everything sounded important. The whole podcast.
Yeah.
That's very kind of you, but I know the truth. When I first came to America, which is a long time ago, people really did love my accent. But I know that since then, Hollywood has made all the bad guys Brits. So I know you just think.
Oh, that's true. But most of them are women now. For some reason,
it's true. Yeah. So maybe us old stale male and pale guys are not the bad guys so much.
Yeah, exactly.
That is so great. Well, to our audience, be sure that you subscribe. Be sure that you share this episode, guys, because I think Calum's right. I mean, Chris and I agree that you have to pay attention. So subscribe.
And the rise of humanness is your new survival skill.
It really is.
Finding that out.
Yeah.
And really by the way, YouTube is judging us now by our subscriptions. So subscribe or we're all doomed.
Yeah, we're all doomed. So great. So until next time, stay curious.
Stay human and keep rising.
Thanks, Calum.
Thank you, guys. This was fun.
Be sure to subscribe to our podcast, either on Spotify, Podbean. Leave us a review there as well.
Share this episode with your friends, and check out The Rise of Humanness on YouTube for bonus clips.
Visit our Facebook community, our website, www.itsvukamax.com. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
The rise of humanness in the age of AI. It's a podcast with Chris and Mike. The rise of humanness in the age of AI. Stay curious, stay human, let's rise.